7 in 10 people in this country, obviously, are for legal pot. You know, now about half the union has passed these ballot initiatives. And this has changed, of course, over the past couple of decades. The real push for marijuana legislation came when your grandma and grandpa started smoking it for their cataracts back in the day, because that's a huge voting bloc, older people. So when they softened on something like marijuana, that's when things really got rolling. And it's just gone from there. So Ohio becoming the 24th state to vote to legalize recreational marijuana. The other 30% say, obviously, it should remain illegal. But support has pretty much stayed around 65, 70% for the past few years. So it hasn't really moved up or down. But despite that, the GOP in Ohio has made it very clear, screw you guys. They said it before with respect to issue 1 and issue 2. They basically said, screw you. Whatever happens, we're going to figure out a way to undermine it or drag it out. A Republican representative in North Dakota has urged authorities in Ohio to, quote, ignore the results of Tuesday's election by a big margin. People in this state, in urban and rural counties, by the way, voted to support issue 1, which unbelievably is controversial, whether or not to let women make their own reproductive decisions. In this country in 2023, that's still a wedge issue, but not as much as you might think. But guys like Mike DeWine and the people running the Ohio Senate, they have said even before all this, well, if they pass, we'll just figure out a way to get around that, essentially. And so some guy from North Dakota named Brandon Pritchard on Twitter basically said that the legislature in Ohio, which is unbelievably gerrymandered, the state, by the way, so just the sheer number of progressive voters who had to show up to make that kind of dent in a gerrymandered state. This guy says, well, that should just be ignored. Figure out how to do away with it. Mike DeWine said, well, I get that people want what they want. And at least he has said that he'll adhere to, that vote, but they want another constitutional amendment. See, they're just going to keep figuring out other ways to do so that would require another statewide vote. So that would require us going back to the polls in March. I don't know why they think people are going to stop going to vote.
Right.
You can keep doing this 100 times. And you know, what's the old line about the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That's what this is them going, no, I think we've really got something here. This deeply unpopular opinion that we've strapped ourselves to, like Slim Pickens in Strangelove. We're going to keep going to the mat for that. Tomorrow's Veterans Day. And whether you're related to a veteran, if you are a veteran, my dad was a vet. I have a lot of family members who are vets. You hear a lot of talk about Veterans Day and it's always framed by the past. Because, if you have parents and grandparents and sons and daughters and siblings, who fought and died in these past operations for centuries. We even have an advertiser running an ad talking about, it's all about Veterans Day. And he's like, anybody fighting the threats that continue to endanger our democracy, and that's meant to elicit a thought of threats from outside. But a lot of those calls are coming from inside the house now, if you pardon the pun. It's not just, they swear an oath, right? Threats, foreign and domestic. A lot of domestic threats. And it's not unprecedented in this country, by the way. When people, you talk to people who think that everything that's happening now, because it's happening over the course of your life, that it's never happened before, which is why history is so important and why so many people on the right want to whitewash history. They know how important it is. And they know a lot of it ain't pretty. But to be aware of what that entails, the good, the bad, and the ugly, is the only way to make informed decisions. You know, the late 30s, the American Nazi Party filled Madison Square Garden. 20,000 people who were definitely down with what Hitler was doing in Europe. So it's not, if you see all the wildness that's going on, it's not unprecedented. But when we talk about Veterans Day, you have to ask what constitutes a worthy cause. Because I guess we always have money for war. Always have money for war. So when the Ohio Senate goes, you know what, we're going to look into, they come up with all kinds of nonsense about how, well, people were misled and we were outspent, which has nothing to do with how people vote. I mean, it's instrumental in getting the word out, but there are just as many people who ignore those things as otherwise. They know what they're for and what they're against, the electorate. So, you know, you hear people talking about, oh, we've got money for Israel and Ukraine. Because, yeah, we always find money for that. Always find money for war. And they go, we are the most powerful nation in history. We, not just the most powerful nation on the planet, most powerful nation in history. But if you talk about giving people health care, all of a sudden we are uniquely powerless. We have no power at all, right? I mean, war funds come from us. We pay for that. But a huge number of bankruptcies in this country are from medical debt. So if the argument is that, you know, single-payer health care or whatever would bankrupt us, how are we not going to be bankrupted by paying for 2 wars or all this other stuff? It's just weird. So that's what I think of when we talk about Veterans Day, which you should absolutely. I think this came from, I was reading a thing this morning, said that young veterans are the most uncomfortable when someone thanks them for their service. You know, younger men and women who serve, they're like, I don't care for it.
Yeah.
I think older ones, you know, World War II, I don't think many of those people are still around, but those people were a little bit more, they don't want to talk about it, but they appreciated kind of that ritual of doing that. But a lot of younger, over the past couple of generations, a lot of younger veterans are like, especially uncomfortable with that whole thank you for your service thing.
One of my best friends, he was in the Army, and he used to get it all the time too. He would hear, "Oh, thank you for your service," and he's like, he like cringes. He doesn't know what to say. He's like, "You're welcome."
Well, it's also because I don't think people know what to say. So thank you for your service became, you really do want to say something. You know, you've done something that the majority of people have opted not to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want to say something. You want to recognize it.
Well,
I don't know what the alternate, like I don't do that just because I know it makes veterans uncomfortable. I don't do that. But it's like you want to say something. Fist bump them. What do you do? High five them?
I don't. I mean, if I think they're cute, I'll buy them a coffee. Like if I'm in line somewhere and they're one time there was.
Do you say you're going to be thanking me for my service in about 3 hours?
No, I was behind a line of officers at Chipotle one time, and they were cute. They looked nice in uniform, and I was just like, "Hey, they, you know, put their burritos or whatever on me." And they all kind of turned and looked, and they were like, "Oh, thanks, man, whatever." And
Poundcake's like, that's not what I meant when I said.
He's like, no, I meant you have to eat them off of me.
And I was like,
when I said put your burritos on me, that's not what I meant.
Try the old burrito trick, like a popcorn bucket.
Yeah.
Everyone in line.
Why is it wrapped in foil?
Everyone in line probably thought I was the biggest narc in the world because I was like, "Oh yeah, thank you guys for your service." Meanwhile, I was just horny for them in their uniform. But
it was Fleet Week.
They got a free burrito out of me, and
well, but that's nice.
My equivalent.
That's nice.
But I never say Happy Veterans Day, Happy Memorial Day. I know that's probably not the standard.
Well, no, you're not supposed to say Happy Memorial Day.
But there are people that do that. They'll put it on, you know.
Well, this is why understanding history is so important.
They treat it like the 4th of July. They'll put an American flag and fireworks. I'm like, ugh. Yeah. I don't put any of that stuff on social media because you
bought them all coffee and burritos.
No, it was.
He's like, I like my coffee like I like my man. Lots of milk.
That was like a $50, $60 thing because he was like, "I'm gonna get guac and chips if that's okay." I was like, "You can."
They start double meating it.
Yeah. Well, no, because they had already ordered, and the one guy was at the end of the line.
60 potatoes, 60 pies, 60. 55. 55.
He's like, "You don't have to do that. I was gonna get guac and chips." I'm like, "You get whatever you want."
55 burritos, services in our country. 55 tours of Iraq.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Yeah, I was a little.
America first. America first. What the hell, man? Dude, America first.
I look like an
America
informant.
First. To all of you, let me explain one thing.
Why does that make you look like...
55 tacos, 55 pies, 55 Coke, 100 tater tots, 100 pizzas, 100 tenders, 100 meatballs, 100 coffees, 55 wings, 55 cakes, 55 pancakes.
55 pancakes.
It was such a brown-nosing thing to do. Like that.
Do you know what a narc is?
Yeah, a snitch.
Oh, he knows what a
I know
narc
what a narc is.
But like,
what would that have to do with it?
Yeah,
Like, I'm
what are
trying
you
to get into-
snitching on?
Nothing.
They're
It's
not
just-
the police. They're not investigating Americans.
They weren't the police. These were police officers.
Oh, I'm talking about veterans.
We're talking about veterans.
I understand, but in this particular instance, the only time
Okay, well, you made it seem like you were doing this for veterans, not for...
No, they were police officers. They were in uniform.
That's not what we're talking about. I'm not
Okay.
talking about cops.
Well,
Talking
they were
about people that... You understand that that's a different thing, right?
Yes, I do, but some of them have served. But I'm
yes,
just
but
saying,
that's not what we're talking about. I mean, that's...
I haven't seen a guy come into uniform, like in their military uniform, in a Chipotle.
I thought
And
you were
did.
talking about dudes during Fleet Week. I thought it was a bunch of
No.
guys.
Oh, hell no. That's expensive. I'm not buying a whole crew.
Right, but even if it was like two guys in their fatigues,
These were like 3.
2 or 3 guys, whatever it was, that's one thing. But you bought for cops, that has nothing to do with Veterans Day.
Well, whatever.
He's
It
trying.
has nothing to do with veterans.
Whatever.
They're
Like
there to
he's
protect and
trying to
serve.
spotlight his good deeds. Is what he's doing there.
But he didn't do it because he's a good person. He did it because they were
Hot.
attractive.
They were hot cops.
Yeah.
Ironically, it turns out they were all strippers on their way to a bunch
Yeah.
of different parties. So that was just wasted money. I have $1,000 here for you. Give it to whomever you like. A sock it away for yourself. Courtesy of the Buzzard Bookie. Good luck.
This is your chance to bet with the Buzzard Bookie and win $1,000 now. Enter this nationwide keyword at WMMS.com. Cash. That's cash. Enter it now at WMMS.com.
Did you see what just happened?
No.
Okay, so this guy comes over and he gets like right by the window and he's looking at us and kind of trying to get our attention. And then he walks back over. Now he's standing with his wife, and his wife's like, "What are you doing over there? Why are you going to see that?" And
People don't realize there's
it's
so much
so
glare
funny.
for us. We can barely see what's happening out there. So when people come up,
Yeah. Now, I can see him just fine, but also we're doing a show, so I can't just be like, "Hey, bud." But it was just like the way that his wife was yelling at him as he walked back was quite funny.
yeah, right. Al on the left is more against history with statues and Nazis. Yeah, we are very much against Nazis. Sorry about that. The statues, yeah, I think that's kind of silly. I get where it's coming from.
But the statues that were taken down were put up for Confederates as a way to intimidate people.
To intimidate, but right, yeah,
it's not-
families of slaves and people of color and things like that. I got no problem with that. That's not, by the way, that's not erasing history. People who are trying to ban books and things like that, that's trying to whitewash history. You know, Republicans who are like, slaves learned a valuable trade. You know, that's trying to completely retcon things that happened. Taking down statues doesn't erase those people from history. It's not Quantum Leap.
The way we
but
were taught about
nice try.
the colonization of America is erasing history, where we weren't taught how things actually went with the natives that were here.
Alan, I'm a vet. It comes down to being drafted or not. To me, a true veteran got drafted. All the rest of us volunteered. Listen, I guess that's a distinction without a difference, and I'll let you make that one. But I think anybody who served, boy, I mean, me being born kept my dad from going to Vietnam because he had gotten his papers. But I was a giant baby, and I was an emergency C-section, and in the early 70s, that was major surgery. It might still be considered that. But my dad has papers to go to Nam, and me being born kept him from going. So I might have grown up without a dad. I don't know. Now, it didn't, you know, I used to throw that at him all the time when I wanted the keys to the car, and it never worked.
Well, you don't have a dad now, so boom.
Right. Alan, Vietnam vets really like being thanked now because initially they were spit on. Yeah, it was not coming back home and they're yelling baby killer at you and all. Yeah. So I saw Rambo. Hey, if you listen to us on iHeartRadio, tell me where you're doing that. If it's from out of state, you can always leave us messages there too. Brad listens in Fort Mill, South Carolina. Mike's one of our bureau chiefs in Seattle. Todd's in Phoenix. Clay is in Miami. Moop listens in Severna Park, Maryland.
Word to the wise, I just want to let the audience and everybody know cocaine can stay in your system longer than 3 days. It can stay in your system up to 3 weeks. I mean, it just depends on how much you do, really. If you do like one night, it's going to be out your system in like 3-4 days. But if you do it like every night for a while, it's going to be in there a while. You're going to go to jail or lose your job or something because you would thought you was slick. And you wasn't.
I think it is currently in his system now. Is that the uncompetable guy? Is that the same dude?
Maybe.
Uncompetable.
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 I love it. You thought you was slick and you wasn't.
That's very funny.
Yeah.
You was slick and you wasn't.
You thought you was slick and you wasn't. All right, I got to take a break here. If you want to send a text, 35192 to do that, AlanCoxShow.com if you want to watch, and we'll be back.
The Alan Cox Show on 100.7 WMMS. And every